I have a question. In a world dominated by popular marketing doctrines like account-based marketing and paid advertising, what evidence-based strategies have consistently outperformed conventional wisdom in driving conversion optimization and scalable growth, particularly in B2B tech companies? Now, to get some answers, we'll be speaking with the CEO of Spiralize. But first, hello and welcome to the Predictable B2B Success Podcast brought to you by Sproutworth.com. I'm Vinay Koshi, and our guest, as I mentioned earlier, is Sahil Patel, CEO of Spiralize, a company that specializes in predictive CRO or conversion rate optimization and data-driven landing page optimization. Now, Sahil, you've had quite a bit of history. Prior to Spiralize, you founded and were CEO of ER Express, a SaaS company that you ran for about 11 years and then sold back in 2021, if I'm not mistaken. You have a wealth of experience in operations, sales, software development, finance, but perhaps of particular note, given your work with Spiralize, you've helped optimize well over 34,000 landing pages using data from over 130,000 A/B tests. Now, that's very, very interesting. Most of us wouldn't have anywhere near that kind of experience. I'm curious, though, was there a particular event or incident that led you to create Spiralize to what it is today? And
Yeah, what led me to do it?
is that initial impetus still the same cause of growth and drive, so to speak, at Spiralize today?
Well, Vinay, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm really glad to be here. And
Pleasure.
great question as a starting point. Wh- What got me doing this and what's continuing to drive me today? And let me say, I have a unusual story and I couldn't have predicted it or written it. It's worked out really well. You mentioned I ran a SaaS business before Spiral. It's called ER Express. And I was actually an early customer of Spiralize. And that's how I found out what it was. I didn't know what conversion rate optimization was. Notionally, I got the concept of A B testing. I had never really thought about it on how you could apply it to a website or how you could use it to um, improve the performance of a website. It was kind of eye opening, but it had a really big impact on ER Express, and it made me a true believer. And after I sold ER Express and I was thinking about my next chapter, I had stayed in touch with the founder of Spiralize. He's a guy, actually an Aussie guy named Gajan Ratnasaba, and from Brisbane. And he had continued to build the business, an amazing job, and he was looking for a partner to help him take it to the next level. And it's just one of those things where he's good at certain things, I'm good at other things, really good complementary fit. And he was looking for a partner, and I was looking for my next chapter. So the timing was wonderful. And that's how I joined Spiralize.
Brilliant. And given your journey to date, what would you say would be your personal area of strength?
My personal area of strength is, I'll say the one thing is, so the customer base that we serve is high growth B2B SaaS businesses who generate a significant part of their revenue growth through their website.
Mhm.
And I think the thing that I bring to the table is that I've been one of them. Like the customers that we sell to, that we serve, that we partner with, I have a really good understanding of their challenges because I've been one of them. I've been one of them much longer than I've been the leader of Spiralize. And
Mm.
so I think anytime you can bring that perspective, where you understand your customers really well and they know that you get where they're coming from, I think that's an important asset.
Mhm. And in that area of strength, what is it that you would say most businesses don't know?
Mm. Well, I think a good starting point is most businesses don't know how little time they have to convey to someone who visits their website,
Mhm.
whether that person is going to stay or leave. And it happens on I would say almost like a subconscious psychological level.
Mhm.
Now, there's a lot of kind of obvious things you should do. If your website takes like a long time to load, that's trouble.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of other things that, and I'll share some anecdotes here in a moment, but that I think honestly, I think a lot of companies actually overthink it and overcomplicate what's on their website. And I like to think about if you go into a restaurant and you just walk into a restaurant, what maybe Vinay, I'll ask you. What can you think of the last restaurant you were sometime in the last couple weeks?
Mhm.
Let me ask you, what was it? What was the name of it?
Chinese restaurant, Haidilao.
Chinese restaurant. Okay, great. And are you a regular there? Was it new? First time there? What was the situation?
Been there a few times, not very regular,
Okay, a
but a
few
few
times.
times. Yeah.
Okay, and is this like a place where you sit down to eat, or are you getting takeout?
No, sit down to eat.
You sit down. Okay, got it. So everyone at home, we can picture this. I've never been to this restaurant. Perhaps most of your audience has not as well, but they have some picture of it. You walked in. What's the first thing you notice when you walk into that particular restaurant? Try and put yourself in your mindset of whatever it was a couple weeks ago. You walked in. What's the first thing you noticed?
The staff. They greet you.
The staff. Yeah. What did you notice about them?
Well,
Were they nice?
yeah,
Were they
absolutely.
indifferent?
Yeah, very considerate. Ask about your booking, etc. Take you to the table. So quite considerate.
So they welcomed you. They welcomed. And what else did you notice about the vibe or anything else when you first walked in the door? Like you open the door and you walk in. What'd you notice?
They specialize in hot pot,
Okay.
so it's certainly set up for that particular kind of food. Clean, certainly make the atmosphere and the staff certainly let you know that they really focus on making the customer feel welcome and at home.
Feel welcome. And my guess is I've been to a few hot pot restaurants. My guess is the nature of it, because the food is right there on the table in the pot. You can smell it.
Correct.
It's a very fragrant aroma, probably from the moment you walk in.
Yeah.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. And my guess is if you brought me to that restaurant blindfolded and you just took off the blindfold, I would probably be able to tell what kind of food I was in for probably pretty quickly, right? So I think that experience, like the vibe immediately. What I heard you say is it's welcoming. The staff immediately said, welcome. Can we take you to a table? The aroma of the hot pots. I don't know how fancy this place is, but there was probably some kind of atmospheric and vibe that it conveyed to you. Am I correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And my guess is all of these things hit your senses, your smell, your eyes, just your emotion, probably within the first few seconds of you walking in the door, without you really thinking a lot about it.
Yep.
Is that a fair statement?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For websites, the same is absolutely true. Your website, your homepage, it's the front door, if you will, to the company. And the impression that it conveys to your audience, they are receiving it and making snap judgments in a matter of seconds at an almost subconscious level. And so these really complicated things, by the way, it's not that these things are unimportant. Strategic positioning, messaging, where do we fit in with the competition? You absolutely got to do those. Everyone does them. We do them too. But there's some simpler, faster things that first convey to your customer what you're about. And I think, back to your question, I think especially in the B2B SaaS world, many, at least websites and companies that I look at, have underestimated that and don't spend enough time thinking about it.
Certainly. You make a great point, and I know most people would love to be able to get into personal conversations with people and kind of view how people respond viscerally and emotionally, both in body language and in words, which is a bit hard to do when you have people visiting a website because there's this complete disconnect. Now, given that, How would you suggest that we bridge that gap?
Yeah. So I want to focus on things that are super practical
Mhm.
for everyone who's joining us and listening or watching tonight. Tonight, we're recording. It's Sunday night here in the U.S. It's Monday morning in Australia for you. Um, and let's start with kind of two things that I think everyone can do with relatively low cost, low investment that gives them like some really useful data points to then go make some decisions about, do they need to change? First of all, maybe they don't need to change anything about their website from a conversion rate optimization standpoint. And if they do need to change it, what should they change? So I'm going to start with something that's very easy and tactical, and then something that has a little bit more investment, a little bit more. Um, I would say maybe you could call it a little bit more strategic. And I think you should at least try both because they're not hard to do. So here's the first one. It's called the 1 second test, and it's super easy. Everyone can do it. Take your website, right click in the browser, and choose Google Translate when you right click, and choose a language that your immediate kind of just people, your friends and family don't speak. So it could be Farsi or Urdu or Hindi or Arabic, naming some languages that are spoken in my household, but unlikely for the average person maybe on the street speak. Take your homepage, I'm gonna put it in Arabic, and then show it to 5 people who don't know don't know you, okay? Just or at least don't know you well enough to instantly know this is your website, and just ask them, what do you think this company does?
Mhm.
Okay? Now, you're not looking for someone to say they make ERP software for architecture firms. Nothing that specific. If they get something categorically close, like, it looks like a software company or some kind of business computing something, or maybe they get as closely as looks like a place where you can buy shoes. Okay, you're on the right track. And if they say something like, it looks like you sell sweaters, you might have a problem,
Mhm.
right? And by the way, I see this all the time. I did this exercise recently. The company had the main image on their homepage was someone with their stock imagery of two people with yellow cardigans on. And by the beauty of this is when you hit Google Translate, it removes the words
Mhm.
from the equation. And if you think about when your audience reaches the website, their brain isn't reading the words. It's making instantaneous snap judgments about, am I in the right place? Did I just walk into the right restaurant? And what is that restaurant conveying to me? Is it warm and inviting? Is this a fast casual where I order at the counter? This is a little bit more of a place where I sit down and order some food from the menu. And does it smell good? Is the lighting nice? What's the vibe? That's why we do the right click and put it in a different language. And it turned out it was accounting software.
Hmm.
I just think about what it tells your brain, the processing time that your brain has to do, the cognitive load you're putting on your audience if they have to make a leap from yellow sweaters to accounting software. And and I love it because it's so simple and it's eye opening. Do it with you don't have to be a marketing professional. You don't have to be a digital marketing. You certainly don't have to be a conversion rate optimization person. In fact, the higher up in the organization you do it, the more entertaining the results, right? Do it with your leadership team, great. Do it with your C-suite, even better. Do it with the board,
Mhm.
even better. So eye opening. So that's the tactical thing. And what it can give you is a directional answer. Are we conveying, we'll go back to the restaurant metaphor, are we conveying in that instantaneous, at a psychological level, does our audience know they're in the right place?
Mhm.
Now, second thing I would do is I would then, uh, let's say the answer is no. You got to do something about it. What are you going to do? I'm sure you probably have some talented people in house that can come up. Maybe your digital marketing can some new ideas. You might hire a freelancer. If you have enough money, maybe hire an agency. There's lots of good agencies that do this kind of work. And you come up with three options. And Vinay, in your experience, you've been doing this a long time. How then do most companies make the decision about, okay, what's the homepage? It's the retail storefront of our company. It's the front door to our business. We've got three beautiful ways to do it. What are we going? How do most of them decide in your experience?
Um, I'd say most of them put in what they often say. So, in other words, if they're asked, "What do you do?" That's what they put in on the homepage in
Oh,
some form or shape.
yeah. They say what they do, then they look at the three, and then they show it to the CEO, and everyone's kind of hoping that the
Yeah.
CEO picks the one that they recommended. Okay. And God help you if she or he doesn't. Okay. And often what happens is an argument ensues. And the highest paid opinion not always wins, but
Mhm.
sometimes wins one way or the other. And what I would recommend to everyone instead is call my good friends at Winter, WYNTR. By the way, I'm not being paid to say this. There's no revenue relationship with them. Their CEO, founder, amazing person, Pep. He's kind of godfather of conversion rate
Yeah.
optimization, especially in the B2B world. You know Pep? Have you had Pep on the show?
I haven't had him on the show, but I'm certainly familiar with his work over at
Yeah,
Conversion
everyone knows
Excel.
Pep. Yeah, CXL, just amazing guy. And um, so Pep has a couple companies. One of them called Winter. What they will do is you can say, "Hey, my audience is um, security directors at mid-sized companies with at least 500 people. Okay, can you go find 15 of those people, show them three new versions of my homepage, and give us unfettered, unvarnished feedback? Good, bad, awesome. What they get, what they don't get." And I will tell you, for most of my companies I work with, it's eye opening.
Mhm.
Even the ones that are really, really high performing, there's always something in there that's a surprise. Maybe a good surprise, maybe a bad surprise,
Yeah.
but something that's a surprise. And these are things, by the way, you could do this. You could spend, I would say, certainly under $2,000. I think maybe even under $1,000, around there. It's priced very reasonably for a one-time thing. And you will get data points and you'll hear things that you would not otherwise hear. By the way, they give you like the qualitative feedback. You get to actually kind of hear what's inside their head. And I tell you, I think you'll reach a better outcome than if you just internally argue over
Mhm.
what should go on your homepage. And let's just extrapolate that for a moment. You can take that process, it's something that almost any B2B SaaS company can do, and apply these two techniques to your landing pages, to your pricing page, to your demo request if you're a sales led motion company, to your sign up for free trial if you're a PLG, product led growth type of company. By the way, those are usually the 4 or 5 most visited pages for most B2B SaaS companies. Now, there's lots of other more sophisticated things you can do, but those are two things that you can do relatively easily and get really, really useful results that'll have an impact.
Hmm. Well, that's interesting that you say we should really focus in on the messaging, make sure that the message that we convey is clear.
And the imagery, that's the thing I would
Yeah.
add. But messaging here is like one thing I want to add is messaging to me connotes not just the words. So I think a lot of people hear messaging and they think, oh, copywriting, focus
Mhm.
on the copywriting. But copywriting, of course, very important. Messaging means, I would say, it's the overall impression that you're
Right.
conveying to your audience.
Certainly. And
Please go ahead, though. I
I
interrupted.
think you also provided a solution to those who do not have high traffic volumes by using one of these types of services, or certainly using the Google Translate test that you recommended. I'm curious
Cheap
though.
and easy. I love
Yeah.
cheap and easy.
I'm curious though. There's a lot of conversation around things like paid advertising, ABM, etc., where this whole conversation piece around messaging and clarity, certainly visuals as well, isn't talked about so much. They would sometimes advocate setting up separate landing pages with separate messaging, etc., and driving traffic to those pages. What would be your take on such perspectives?
Yeah. So, Vinay, I think the thing you were asking, or the question I heard, is if you're spending meaningful amounts of money on advertising and what you're doing is buying clicks and you're sending that traffic somewhere, what is my opinion on where should that traffic go? Should it go to dedicated landing pages? And then what's the benefit of doing so? Am I hearing the right question?
Well, that's certainly part of it, but also in terms of the messaging. A lot of these platforms or agencies, if you will, almost seem to gloss over the whole messaging and clarity piece of the conversation, and
Yeah.
with what a company's already doing in order to drive traffic, which is an interesting approach given your data-driven, evidence-based approach to what you were
Yeah.
doing earlier.
I think here's a couple observations I would share from having done this for a while. One is many companies spend a lot on the traffic, and I don't mean just their ad buy.
Mhm.
Of course, that's a lot of money, but I just mean overall energy and effort. They hire an agency. They, of course, have to pay the agency. They're going to A/B test the ads. They're going to run ads in multiple channels. The B2B world, LinkedIn, Google Search, Bing, Meta, all these places.
Mhm.
And I would say they underinvest drastically on the destination that they're sending that traffic to.
Mhm.
And that's a huge mistake. First mistake I see people do is they send that traffic to their homepage. Now, let's go back to the metaphor we talked about earlier, the restaurant. This would be like sending, let's think about a restaurant like McDonald's. They have a drive-through window and they have a front door.
Mhm.
And if you want drive-through food, a drive-through order, and you go to the front door, you're not going to have a great experience. And if you want to dine in and you go through the drive-through, you're also not going to have the experience that you want. The same is absolutely true if you have someone that clicks on an ad and you send them into the front door of your company, the website, the homepage. That is a very general place to send them. And just like if you're McDonald's, you have a purpose-built place for the drive-through traffic. If you have paid traffic, which has very different characteristics than organic traffic, you want to have a purpose-built destination. And there's lots of tools that make it easy for you to create that destination. So that's the first thing first mistake people do is they're they over-indexed on what channel should I use? How much should I spend? What's the ad copy that gets people to click? By the way, you got to pay attention to those things. And they're vastly under-indexed on what's the experience I should deliver to someone. They click. Now, I'm going to go deep on this for a moment because people spend a lot of money on this traffic. You should separate your branded search, branded key terms, like the name of your company, from non-branded search terms, because those are also two very different audiences.
Yep.
Now, I don't want to go too deep right now. We can go on that later, but I just want to draw that very important distinction. All right. Now, let me stop there. I can talk about landing page strategy in a moment. It's something that Spiralize we spend a lot of time on. I personally spend a lot of time on. You tell me where we want to take this. Do we want to talk more about landing pages, or is there a different place we want to take this?
Let's go with landing pages for now.
Okay. So landing pages. Again, let's spend some time on the tactics that everyone who's listening can take away and go act on right away. By the way, without hiring an agency or spending a ton of resources, just something it's very practical. And the framework here is called the hook, the mirror, and the ladder.
Mm-hmm.
The hook, the mirror, and the ladder. The hook is what gets your audience to click. It's that headline, if we're talking about a Google search engine ad, that little interesting thing that's in the first few words that's going to draw people in. That's the hook. The mirror is that you want to repeat that same language on the landing page, because it tells your audience you are delivering on the promise you made when they clicked. The latter is from a visual hierarchy, how high up you put the mirror. And you want to hang that mirror as high up on the landing page as possible. If you can make it the H1, you can speak a little bit of technical language here. If you can make it the H1, great. If you can't, there are sometimes reasons where you don't. Make it at least the H2, like the byline, the subheadline. But if you bury it, if someone has to look for it, if it's in small font, it's off to the side, you can have a great hook. You can have the mirror, but it's placed in the wrong way. Your audience is going to be disoriented. They can spend the first part of looking at your landing page thinking, am I in the right place? And then they're going to be looking for the thing that you promised them. I would say so many companies, just these are really simple things. You don't have to spend a lot of money to just or time to get them right, or at least get them better than what they are today.
This idea of testing, you advocate for testing multiple elements at once, as opposed to one at a time, that perhaps many of us have
yeah. So great. So Vinay, great thing. Do we advocate, or do I, as the CEO of Spirals, advocate for testing multiple elements in a single concept? The answer is yes. And let me say that there are really smart people who are way smarter than I am, way more experienced than I am, and maybe even get different or better results when it comes to the world of conversion rate optimization, who really disagree with me. And they are going to cringe when they hear this. It's okay. There's room for disagreement. Now let's just put some context here. In this part of conversion rate optimization, A/B testing, what we do is we take two versions of a landing page. The A, which is your current version, and the B. And what most A/B testing is, you split your traffic, so half your audience gets one version of the page, half gets the other, and then you compare the difference. And if the B gets better results, you say, oh, that was the winner. And it's a scientific way to test the difference. And it's in fact the gold standard. Just as an aside, when we test new drug treatments, this is the method that we trust. We test drugs to see, make sure. And what it lets you do is it lets you, I don't want to say eliminate, but greatly reduce and isolate any kind of distractions or other outside variables. Let me just get a sip of water here. Okay, so there's one school of thought that says, look, you should change one thing at a time. Otherwise, you know what worked. If you change the headline, you change the image next to the headline, and you change where the button is located. Is it all three of those things? Is it one of those things? Is it two out of the three? Is it all of them together? And if you change them, you'll never know. And they are absolutely right. There's no argument there. They're absolutely right. But here is the pragmatic perspective, which is the one I hold. For the vast majority of B2B SaaS companies, to run a test to statistical significance, and most companies want to run 90, maybe 95% stat sig, it takes you at least 2 weeks, sometimes 4 weeks, to run a test. Okay? That means in a year, on a single page, you might run 10 tests. So you have finite and scarce and valuable chances to produce an outcome. And while there are some companies that have the luxury of, it's okay if the test loses because we'll learn something from it. Most CEOs aren't paying you to learn something.
Yep.
And most boards, and let's all remind ourselves that most of us serve at the leisure of the board. They care about the learning. So what makes the world go round. Because ultimately you're running the experiments, the conversion rate optimization, to make the conversion rate go up.
Yep.
So that's why the school of thought that I subscribe to is to take big swings. Because big swings get big wins. It's very hard to find wins. But the data shows, the evidence shows that if you combine 2 or 3 known winning patterns into a single test, you can get double-digit gains in the conversion rate. And if you do that a couple times a year and you go to your CEO and you tell her, hey, we ran 10 tests this year and 2 of them increased our conversion rate by 20%. I don't think she cares about the other 8 times. And you can chalk that up to learning. Wonderful. So that's why I advocate for taking big swings.
Okay. A couple of things. Would conversion rates of increases of, say, 20%, maybe more, is that commonplace in your experience?
It's very rare.
Okay.
It's very difficult to get double-digit gains.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you have a completely unoptimized website,
Yep.
there will be some low-hanging fruit.
Mm-hmm.
Most A/B testing consists of 2 things. Testing on impulse and testing on perceived best practice.
Right.
And both have very limited ability to drive results over and over and over again. Let's talk about why that happened. Testing on impulse. You get some smart people in a room, and you go, what should we test next? And you argue it. There's probably some research that goes into it, but you're chasing into intuition and hunches. And if there's some low-hanging fruit, you can test almost anything and get some gains. But it gets much more difficult after you pick the low-hanging fruit. Here's a fact. On average, industry average, and by the way, these aren't spiralized numbers, these are industry numbers. Only 10% of tests produce a statistically significant outcome that beats the control.
Right.
So what that tells you is 90% of the time, you're either inconclusive or you've underperformed your control.
Right. Okay.
It's daunting. Now, perceived best practice is you have 2 or 3 data points. You go, well, it worked for them. It should work for us. Now, it's better than nothing. But again, in the long run, your win rate is not that high. The third option is if the test has been run by multiple companies, especially other similar companies, and it's been validated, your chances of winning go way up. In fact, 3 times higher. Those are the best tests to run.
Okay. Certainly.
That's where the double-digit gains come from.
I'm also curious, if you're improving conversion rate optimization, and given the way the search engines have changed their algorithms in recent history, are you seeing more correlations between the two in terms of actual traffic to those pages?
I'll admit, Vinay, I don't think I know enough to be able to say, is there a correlation there? It's an interesting idea, though.
Yep. So, given what you've shared, is there a specific example that you could walk us through in terms of
Yeah,
the kind of gains that you've seen as a result of the tests?
happy ha- happy to do that. Let's share. I'm going to share 3 big ideas that are
Okay.
pretty big swings. And again, they're things that most of the folks who are listening can do with a little bit of effort, a little bit of ingenuity. You don't have to go hire a fancy agency to do this or necessarily have a big, sophisticated in-house testing team. And I want to give that context because if you, let's say you follow booking.com, they're kind of some of the pioneers of conversion rate optimization. Really amazing people, incredible buy-in at the leadership level. They've invested a lot in it. They're like the Taylor Swift of conversion rate optimization. Just amazing. But for the rest of us mortals who like to sing in the car while we drive to work, or maybe can strum a few chords on a guitar, we're never going to be there. And all joking aside, I think it's good to start with kind of practical advice. So here's the 3. Now, the first thing I'll start with the question. Vinay, can you think of the last car commercial you saw? You just pictured in your head. Could be a commercial, could be an ad, could be anything.
Okay. Yep.
Something you saw on YouTube. Can you think of what it is?
Yep.
Okay. What car? Do you remember what car it was? What company or what type of car?
It was a Kia.
Kia. Okay, great. And what was happening in the commercial?
What I would call a pretty standard commercial. So the car driving on the road.
Yeah, and it was probably like a beautiful road. Maybe it was windswept and curves, and there's the little thing that said, "Please do not attempt this at home." Controlled environment, right? Okay. Now, maybe they showed the people. Did they show the people driving the car as well, or the owner of the car having fun or doing something?
I think it was more silhouettes. There wasn't a direct focus on the people.
Okay. Yeah, because the focus of the ad is the car.
Yep.
The thing that you're trying to get people excited about is the automobile. Now, imagine that same exact ad, like beat for beat, and just imagine that someone came in and went and erased the car. What would you be left with as a commercial?
Just the road and perhaps the people.
Yeah, nothing. I mean, it'd be like, what the hell is this? Yeah. What am I watching? And the likelihood that it would then convert people's attention. First of all, I don't think you'd have their attention for very long. The idea that it might convert their attention into someone that go, hey, I'm going to go test drive that car. I'm going to go. Nowadays, we buy cars online. I bought my last car online and go buy it. It's not going to happen. It's absurd on the surface. And now you would be amazed. I'm going to, again, in the world of B2B SaaS, how many companies on their homepage or on their solutions page or on their demo request page or their sign up for our 7-day free trial don't show the product. It's the equivalent to an automobile ad without the automobile. And they show lifestyle images, stock imagery of people having fun, or presumably people who resemble the end users or end buyers of the product having a wonderful time. First of all, what are people doing at work that's so much fun? Like, I don't know about you, but most of the time at work, I'm staring at a screen, like just doing stuff. So a great A/B test to run is take your like your request demo or your contact us page. Just take the form and put up your best screenshot next to it. And if you don't know what it is, just go to your sales reps and say, what's the point in the sales demo where your audience goes, wow, or woo? Take that one. Okay. For most companies, B2B, it's like some kind of dashboard or something that has gears or shows something cool happening. Okay. Our data shows when we run this test, 57% of the time, it beats the control at a statistically significant level. On average, it produces a 19% conversion lift. And we've seen this test run for more than 100 companies. So it's validated over and over and over. And we validated ourselves more than 100 times. We've also seen other companies that we don't work with run this test. So it's a real signal out there.
Mhm.
So that's test number one. Show the product, show the product, show the product. I can talk about later, if we have time, about, well, what do you do if someone goes, I don't want to show the product, or I'm nervous about showing a product. We can talk about how to overcome that. Just on the surface, great test to run. Number two, quantitative headline with a bold claim. So on your homepage, wonderful test to run. Also great on a like a demo request or start your free trial page. I see generic headlines all the time. Excellence, unmatched performance, automate something. And these are so boring, and there's no hook. There's nothing specific. Some of them could probably be speaking about any product in the known universe. And a great way to combat this, and a great A/B test is do a quantitative headline that makes a bold claim. If you're a payment company, you might say something like this: get paid 30% faster.
Mm-hmm.
If you were an accounting software, you might say, close your books at the end of the month in 1 day. If you were a warehouse solutions company, you might say, fulfillment in 30% less time. These aren't hard to think of, but if you go talk to your ops people,
Mm-hmm.
they'll tell you the answer. Your product marketers, they'll tell you. You run this test, our data shows it beats the control 44% of the time. On average, it gets a 13% lift. And that is a huge benefit to your organization for changing the copy on the headline on a page.
Yep.
Right. The third test I would recommend is to take and this is a beautiful test to run on a landing page, because landing pages require context. And one of the easiest pieces of context to add is to make your landing pages skimmable. So if you have a wall of text, if you have any sentence that goes on for more than 2 sentences, I would replace it and do 2 things instead. One, I would turn it into 3 bullets. 3 is the magic number. 4 is too many. 2 is kind of weird. 3 bullets. I would bold the first few words. And then I would add social proof. Social proof is one of the most powerful pieces of context, because what you're answering is, does this company solve problems for people like me with problems like mine? Our data shows people make snap judgments based on the logos, the social proof they see. Things like logos, trust badges, reviews, testimonials, star ratings. You should test all of them. But run that test. Make sure that social proof is above the fold and make it as large as possible. Your brain equates importance with the size of real estate it is on the page. Our data shows this test, 30% of the time, about 1 in 3, it beats the control. And when it beats the control, it gets a 28% lift. Now think about that. You show some logos, you turn a few sentences into bullets, and you get almost 30% more conversions. Now, certainly the magic is in the execution. You still have to execute it well. But it's a really powerful way to improve your conversion rate on some really important, valuable pieces of real estate on your website.
As you were sharing about showing your product on the homepage, I'm curious, for B2B service companies where things are a little bit intangible, what would you recommend?
Yeah, great question. So I think this absolutely works. It's a little bit harder. Let me say that if you're a service business. But if you are a service business, your product is your people. And what I would say is, the test I would run is, if you have stock images of generic people, It's inauthentic, and people can see it a mile away.
Mm-hmm.
Show images of real people that deliver the work, not the world's best looking models, not some generic stock image. Get some people that actually work at your company. And now we've actually tested this specifically with, now this is a little bit different context, but everything I want to answer, I always provide evidence for the answer, because otherwise you're just chasing impulses, hunches. We've actually run this test with companies that provide in-home services, like cleaning services. And the specific test we run is an image of their control was an image of happy people, happy customers, saying, "Oh, my home is so clean. This is great." And we tested against showing uniformed people, the people that actually deliver the cleaning, with the truck. The truck looks professional. It's kind of behind them, and they're wearing uniforms, and it shows just two people that are clearly, this is who you're going to get. Running that test, they got a 12% conversion rate just from changing that image. So there is evidence to show that it works for service companies. And what you should do is show real, authentic images of the people that work at your company.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm just doing a quick time check here. We've covered a fair bit of ground, but I'm curious, given this idea of conversion rate optimization, is there perhaps an aspect or two that you find doesn't get much airtime? If so, what would they be?
Great question. Doesn't get enough airtime. Well, I'll share a story, but it's one that happens over and over and over. I've seen a chief marketing officer lands at a new company, and she or he, it's just a beautiful moment because everyone is motivated for change. Lord knows why they got rid of the last CMO. New one comes in, they're the new sheriff in town. They're all revved up to make change happen. They've got a mandate. They've got the CEO behind them. They've got some dollars to spend. And the first thing they do is they're going to do a rebrand. And I would tell you this is a huge mistake for 80% of the time. Now, 20% of the time, it probably is the right move because the company is so off target that it's the only kind of card left to play. And by the way, these rebrands are expensive. They take a long time, and they're almost impossible to prove an ROI. Now, there are activities worth undertaking where you can't prove an ROI. Okay. But in the first 6 months, if you're a CMO, honestly, if you're a C anything, you need to show quick results and you need to show tangible results and you need to show a big win. One big win in the first, ideally first 90 days, but certainly in the first 6 months, you need to show a big win. And what a rebranding is going to do is it's going to suck all the energy and it's going to be a lot of money. And what often happens is they launch the new website with the new brand and the SEO goes and the conversion rate goes because everything was done from an aesthetic standpoint. The aesthetic standpoint is very, very important. But they didn't test their way into the new website. And boy, oh boy, there's a lot of unhappiness to go around. So, you asked a question and I've kind of given a sideways answer, which is what's something that's often given not enough attention. What I would say is if you're new in the seat, you got to have one thing that's going to be a quick win in the first 90 days. It's got to be something that has a direct quantitative provable impact on the business. And what I would say is before you start doing a website refresh or a rebrand, is do something that gets more leads coming in the door. You'll be the best friend of the chief revenue officer or the chief sales officer. Your CEO will be real excited, and it's the kind of thing you can take to your board.
Brilliant. Certainly. This has been terrific, Sahil.
Oh, thank you for having me.
One last question before we wrap up. If you were listening to this episode, what would you say would be your top takeaway?
Ooh, my top takeaway is I'm going to go do the 1 second test on my homepage. And if no one can guess what I do, I have some work to do because it probably means I'm leaving a lot of money on the table.
And if listeners are curious, want to find out more or connect with you, where would you suggest they head to?
Yeah, the first thing I would say is check out Spiralize.com. I don't want to turn this into an infomercial for Spiralize, but Spiralize.com if you think you might be interested in talking to us. But I would say more, if you're just interested in kind of learning more about what this is, kind of what is CRO, what is A/B testing, how do you make your landing pages better? Every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, I post at 7:30 a.m. Eastern on LinkedIn, a 2-minute, some kind of insight that I've gained in the last week. I try to make it as interactive as possible and as quick and digestible as possible. So Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Fridays, 7:30 a.m.
Brilliant. We'll include a link to your LinkedIn profile as well on the show notes. Sahil,
thank you.
Thank you so much for doing this. It's been a blast.
Vinay, thank you for having me. This has been great. You're a great host.
No worries at all.